In India's capital, an unseemly battle has broken out between the BJP and the ruling Aam Aadmi Party over who is responsible for the recent communal clashes in the area of Jahangirpuri. At the same time, there seems to be a new template emerging in the country. First communal clashes and then bring in the bulldozers. This is exactly what happened in the aftermath of the Jahangirpuri violence as well, till the Supreme Court stepped in and has halted the rollout of the bulldozers and the demolition drive. How do we understand these recent communal clashes, not just in the capital, but in several parts of India? But beyond that, the Yogi Adityanath template of being a bulldozer Baba, why is this being emulated in other parts of the country? The template, as I said, seems set. Communal clashes and then bring in the bulldozer squads into those very areas. The Supreme Court may now have to show direction, but the larger political, social, and moral questions remain. Is this about the demolition of justice? Is this really about a crackdown on crime? Let's introduce our guests on the program today. Vinit Goenka, leader of the BJP, is with us. We're also joined by well-known lawyer and activist Sanjoy Ghose. We're also joined by a veteran IPS officer. He's been a special director with the Intelligence Bureau, Yashovardhan Azad. Welcome to the program, Mr. Azad. Farah Naqvi, activist author, is with us. And we're also joined from the Aam Aadmi Party by Nitin Tyagi. And as I've been saying, the AAP and the BJP have been locked into a sort of political battle about who the main perpetrator of this recent communal conflagration is associated with, both accusing the other of patronizing these men. Let me, before I get the politicians in, get in Mr. Azad to give us a perspective. This is Delhi. A similar sort of pattern has unfolded in Khargon in Madhya Pradesh and in scattered other parts of the country. As I said, first the clashes, then the bulldozers. What's going on, Mr. Azad?
Well, Barkha, these are horrific incidents, let me say at the very outset. A couple of observations right in the beginning about the issue. First, of the so many states, 7 to 9 or 8 of them, half of them were BJP and the other half were non-BJP. Uniformly, all the states have failed. It speaks much of the administration in all these states. Number two, it's very unfortunate to see these mighty state governments crying over and blaming, some blaming the PFI and the other blaming the Hindu rightist elements for these clashes. It is the job of these states to control riots firmly, and in a secular state more so, not allowing any quarter to any kind of a violence. And number three, unfortunately, when the provocateurs, when provocative statements are made from both sides, if they are not brought to trial, if they are not even arrested, and if they are brought to court, then they are released, then this is a recipe for disaster. Now let me come to the case of Delhi. Delhi is very clear that on that particular day, on the 16th, which you call the Hanuman Jayanti, 2 processions had been given permission and the third was not. Obviously, the Delhi police still attached a posse of policemen, if you heard the special commissioner who said in his press statement. Now, if a posse of policemen was attached to 150 or 200 odd or even 400 processionists, then obviously getting the intelligence, which was not a rocket science, and if they knew this is going, something is serious is going to build up because of the situation or the environment around the country, a heavy armed contingent should have gone. That's number one. Number two, they were still allowed to go with naked swords. And number three, at the point of conflagration, I feel we were taught to act extremely tough and control the situation right in the bud. Both sides were prepared at that particular point, and there was heavy, heavy violence unleashed from both sides. But it is very unfortunate that the police dithered to take action first, anticipating it right in the beginning by not apprehending these goons who have been apprehended now and have been put under an NSA from both sides I'm talking about. But more so, the most important, the culpability will always be there Because if a procession is not allowed during these sensitive times, and yet it is allowed to go ahead, that's a very serious matter.
So you're saying this is the failure of policing?
This is the failure of the policing. This is the failure of the people on both sides also not to contain themselves at a serious time like this, when there should be pundits and Maulvis also advising their people that you should have their caution and not indulge in violence. I think it's a collective failure, and we are seeing some very, very bad times in the future.
Right. And as you mentioned, videos have emerged actually from both communities in this particular case, showing people who are armed, Mr. Azad. And we have played both of those videos. But then come the bulldozers. What's with that? And then I'll open it up. What is this thing about bringing in bulldozers into areas that see this kind of violence, this communal violence that we've been seeing in the last few weeks?
Extremely unfortunate. I don't think a bulldozer has any role in controlling riots or post-riots. Even in Khargon, you realize that now the government is apologizing to the person whose house was demolished and which was awarded under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Now, bulldozer is something for against encroachment. I am all for using bulldozers, missiles or whatever for encroachment, but with the due process of law. I mean, if in fact, Barkha, I have been, my cadre is Madhya Pradesh, and I know Khargon and all these areas very, very well. If those streets and the encroachments had been removed 1 year before, maybe the police could have managed the processionists much better. So what I'm saying is, this bulldozer can't be an afterthought. It can't be post-riots against rioters. Take the due process. Whole India, the entire India is suffering because of encroachments. Why wasn't it removed at that particular time? Give the notice and remove it. But post-riots, if you're using it, I don't think that's the correct way. And that's what the Supreme Court has rightly said, that you're going to do it without due notice.
I have to say, I've never seen in 25 years of being a journalist, a bulldozer being used in the aftermath of a riot. But it seems to have suddenly wide public sanction, which is why politicians are falling back on it. The number of people who will, for example, talk in very glowing complimentary terms about Yogi Adityanath, calling him a bulldozer Baba, might speak to what we're seeing happen, this new shift in politics. Let me bring in our two politicians. Vinit, if I may start with you. The Supreme Court has put on hold the decision by local authorities in the capital to bring in the bulldozers into these areas. Those authorities, in this particular case, controlled by the BJP, the party you're with. Your response?
Well, Supreme Court is well within its right to stop, given halt order or whatever, and we are all bonded by that particular part. Where I'm pained is Supreme Court does not want to pursue its own order of 2005, where it says loudspeakers cannot be used beyond 10 p.m. until 6 p.m. in the morning. I think I'll have to remind the Lordship that they have to implement their own decisions. They have to pursue that particular decision as well. I also get pained when Supreme Court selectively says, women has right to enter Sabrimala, but does forgets that my Muslim sisters don't have a right to go and pray, and none of the imams are my Muslim sisters. So they also should be equally given the same right. So sometimes I feel Supreme Court is taking sides or what. So this is a question which comes to my mind. I may be wrong completely. I also get pained in one particular part, Barkha, which you may correct me. Why do people always see that Jai Shri Ram is a war cry and a provocative cry, whereas La ilaha illallah is just an emotional call? Both of them are emotional call. Both of them are for prayers of the God. Why do you want to distinct that? And whether to use khaki with danda or whether to use municipal forces with JCP, they both are legal, lawful, and it will be always used. So let me warn these राइटर्स दंगाइयों को सावधान होना पड़ेगा कि अब वो दिन चलेगा कि अब दंगा भी करेंगे, फिर प्लीड भी करेंगे कि हम विक्टिम है, हम किसी प्रोफेसर के बेटे हैं, गरीब है, हमें तो हीरो बनना था, लेकिन क्या हुआ, पिक्चर में फिल्म में काम नहीं कर पाए तो हम यहाँ पे आके बंदूक चला दिए. Now all that days have gone. This is a country where law will preside, and if it is a CRPC case, policeman will come. If it is a case where municipal authorities, the local state government has to act, they will also act, and I think this is justified. Let us see what happens in the court, but at the same time, let me remind those whoever is an enemy within will be tackled very nicely.
Do you believe that a bulldozer should replace a process of law? Law, as I understand,
isn't bulldozer a process of law? Is it illegal?
in a riot impacted area, where I would think the job of the local administration is to build bridges, to de-escalate, to calm temperatures down, to ensure that some form of amity and order is returned. A bulldozer would have a displacing impact, would it not? At the very least, I'm right now not even getting into
I'm
the
so thankful,
justice.
Barkha, you asked this question to me. I'm very thankful because
Yes.
that gives me right. See, if you see in the last 7 decades, these are the only 5, 6 years where I see dropout ratios of Muslim girls coming down drastically in the schools. That is the bridge which I think which has been made. That is an effort been
What
done
is
by my
that? What does
government.
that have to do with?
I'll tell you about the rights. Let me complete. I heard your question and let me answer it. The effort to give justice to my Muslim sisters by bringing in triple talaq, where they were victimized by their husbands, and these so-called thekedars of Islam did not even pursue the.
But
That
I
is
did
bridging
not
of the
even
bridge.
mention
I
the
cannot
word
wait to
Muslim.
complete.
I
When there
didn't
was
even
Corona
mention the
and
word
we
Muslim,
distributed
and you're talking
free
about
free
Muslims.
grains, we never asked ke tera naam Salma ke Sarita hai. That is bridging of the bridges.
Acha,
When
acha,
there
ek
was
minute.
lockdown, we helped everybody without asking them. That is bridging up. But at the same time, we will have to warn enemies within, whether they come from majority community, whether they come from second majority community. That is दंगा किया तो नाम नहीं पूछेंगे.
Okay.
आपके पीछे फिर डंडा भी लगाएंगे और जेसीबी भी
Thi-
लगाएंगे.
So this is what Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi, the union minister, has in fact said today, that it is the crime that is being targeted, not the community. Let me bring in Nitin Tyagi of the Aam Aadmi Party here. Mr. Tyagi, we saw this in the Delhi riots that took place 2 years ago, that your party did not really want to get involved beyond a certain measure in the violence that was taking place in the streets of the capital. You believe that to get involved with any Hindu-Muslim issue, even if it was a manifestation of violence, was to give the BJP in some ways. Mr. Tyagi, can you hear me? Go ahead.
Can you please repeat the question? I was getting a call, so I had to just cut it. I couldn't hear you.
All right. I just want your response at a time when the Aam Aadmi Party is seen to be very defensive from the time of the Delhi riots to this moment, in terms of taking a clear position when there are communal clashes or communal tension.
See, what we're talking about today is a Bharatiya Jagda Party, which has started rioting pan-India. They have been, in last 4 years, their own MP in the parliament has accepted that 3,400 riots had happened. And I think what has happened in Delhi is extremely unfortunate. Maybe it was pre-planned, I cannot say. But when today we are seeing bulldozers going there and houses of a lot of innocent people being bulldozed. I was watching it. Mr. Vivek Kumar Gupta was calling out that he has papers since 1977 and his house is being bulldozed. There's one Sonu Kumar who was shouting that I am a Hindu and we Hindus and Muslims have been living here together. And why are our houses and shops being demolished? And I do not understand. Since last 15 years in North MCD, there is Bharatiya Janata Party. The policing is with Bharatiya Janata Party, who has allowed these encroachments to happen. If those encroachments have happened, so it must have happened with the permission of the BJP ruled MCD, and they must have taken bribes at that time. So they should be held accountable for that. And even their houses should be bulldozed. And all those people who are responsible for these riots that are happening in Delhi in 2020, the riots were, orchestrated by Bharatiya Janata Party. Even today, this has happened. Everybody can see that Ansar is one of their own karyakarta, their own volunteer, their own worker who has started these things. And everything else is happening.
Can I ask you a question though? You call them the Bharatiya Jagda Party. They call you, you as in your party, a kind of riots factory. That's the statement that came from Manoj Tiwari.
In Delhi, we are here in Delhi since last 7 years. We are in Delhi. They are here in India, in this country, in ruling the center continuously. That is for last 8 years, and they have ruled for, let's say, 7-8 years earlier also. They talk about Bangladeshis coming here. What have they done? In this last 8 years, have they pushed out even 8 Bangladeshis out of this country? Pradhan
Can you
Mantri,
answer?
he
Can you
goes
answer
to
my question?
Bangladesh
One minute. You're not answering my question. I'll put your questions to the BJP representative here. My question is, the Aam Aadmi Party is today seen to be defensive, sidestepping issues of religious violence on the streets of Delhi that happened in the Delhi riots,
we
and
do
that
not
seems
believe
to
in
be happening
violence.
again.
We do not believe in violence, Barkhaji. We do not believe in violence. It is
I didn't
not
say
a matter
that, but
of
are you
sidestepping.
defensive
We
about
want
speaking on the
everybody
issue?
and anybody. We want everybody and anybody who is responsible for the violence should be taken to court, and the court should take a decision on that. What is happening in Delhi today, this bulldozing is not a solution. I do not think so. If bulldozing has to be done, it should be done at the houses of people who have ensured that such people encroach upon the government property over there, who have actually उन लोगों को बसाया है वहां पे उन लोगों ने इन्हीं कामों के लिए, या ऐसे लोग जो लोग राइट्स के लिए जिम्मेदार हैं, उन लोगों के घर बुलडोज होने चाहिए। मैं तो कहता हूं भारतीय जनता पार्टी का कार्यालय पे बुलडोजर अगर चला दो तो इस देश में राइट्स बंद हो जाएंगे। राइट्स की फैक्ट्री है भारतीय जनता पार्टी।
Okay, both of you have name called each other. I actually don't believe in running a bulldozer over anybody. But the court has to decide what should happen. That is my view, whether it's the BJP, the Aam Aadmi Party, Riot accused, or those accused of any other crime, because then we may as well go back to the days where people were executed at the town center. Lekin, bulldozer ki baat hui, so before I come to Sanjoy, the one thing that people across communities in Jahangirpuri are lamenting is the complete overnight loss of livelihood without any intimation to them, without any notice, without any time to do anything about this. Mr. Goenka says this is about going after criminals, but I would like to bring in voices from both communities who are today left without a roof over their heads overnight, and they're all abjectly poor, lower income families that we're talking about. Listen in to the first of our voices from the ground, and this starts with a member of the Hindu community.
सर, यहाँ पर एमसीडी के और इतने बड़े पुलिस अधिकारी सारे यहाँ पे आला अधिकारी मौजूद थे, तो आपने उन्हें कागज दिखाया कि वो नहीं मानने को तैयार?
नहीं, पुलिस अफसर को दिखाया तो करे भाई उनसे बोलो, हमारा इसमें कोई रोल नहीं है। यहाँ आया दिखा रहा हूँ, कोई देखने को राजी नहीं हो रहा कागज। फिर भी कह रहा हूँ कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट का भी ऑर्डर आ गया, 1 घंटे पहले आ गया है, भुवनेश्वर रोका जाए, फिर भी कोई नहीं माना।
अच्छा, ये बताएं कि ये अचानक से ये क्यों हुआ? 3 दिनों पहले यहाँ पे जो हिंसक झड़प हुई थी उसका नतीजा रहा, क्योंकि एमसीडी ने उसके बाद ही ये अनाउंसमेंट किया, और उसके बाद बीजेपी के जो दिल्ली प्रदेश अध्यक्ष थे उन्होंने एक लेटर लिखा कि दंगाइयों का तोड़ा जाए। तो आपको लगता है कि क्या आप भी इन चीजों में शामिल थे?
हम शामिल नहीं थे, लेकिन वही बात है, एक के साथ दूसरा जाता है, वही वाली बात हुई। लेकिन हमारा तो लीगल था, हमें जाने आने का मतलब ही नहीं था। हमारा तो लीगल था, डॉक्यूमेंट था, सारा कागज था, 1977 में अलॉटमेंट हुई है, सबको दिखाने को तैयार, कोई देखने को तैयार।
तो यहाँ पर तो भले ही प्रशासन वाले नहीं माने, लेकिन अब आगे आप किस तरीके से
आगे कोर्ट में जाएंगे, हम कोर्ट में जाएंगे, पूरी अपनी डॉक्यूमेंट दिखाएंगे।
So this is one of the many voices from the ground, and you see in the debris of this demolition, you see little children, literally trawling through the streets of Jahangirpuri, trying to gather the remains of what may have been demolished. And we'll play those pictures for you as soon as we can. Let me bring in Farah and Sanjoy now. Farah, go ahead. Farah?
Sorry, yeah. What is your question?
My question is that, you're seeing a kind of pattern develop here of communal violence, clashes, police then sort of, as Mr. Azad said, failing or to contain what's happened. Number of policemen also getting injured, both in Khargon and Delhi. We have seen injuries to those in Khaki. And then you have bulldozers being brought in. Today, the Supreme Court's had to step in. What is the pattern here if you had to join the dots?
Look, I'd like to respond to each one of, and I hope you'll give me a little bit of time to respond to what some of your panelists have said. Number one, I could not make out head or tail of what the respected BJP member said, barring the fact that he kept wanting to somehow save me as a Muslim woman. So he repeated that, and I would request him that I'm all right without your help, and Muslim women are certainly not in need of the BJP to step in on their rights. His concern about education is a whole lot of nonsense. What we've seen in Karnataka is Muslim girls being kept out of the education system because they wanted to hold on to a little smidgen of their identity. This entire debate, Barkha, seems to be happening in a vacuum. The fact is, we're not in a social or a political vacuum right now. What has happened in Delhi, absolutely heartbreaking for Hindus, Muslims, Christians, anybody who is living in that area, yes. But this is following upon an entire environment of hate, violence, bigotry. And I would like to ask that BJP person on your panel, how can he, I will list names for him: Prabodhanand, Pooja Shakun Pandey, Dhirendra Shastri from the Bhageshwar Dham in Madhya Pradesh, Bajrang Muni, Suresh Chavanke, Ragini Tiwari. I can name 1,000 of them. These are all people who have called for genocide of Muslims. Genocide. Make no mistake. They have called for picking up arms and destroying these Muslim jihadis. There are 1,000 videos. Now, I am just laying out a context. This is not a both sides get hurt. Both sides, I agree with a lot of what Mr. Azad said. This is an abject failure of the administration and the police, which has more than enough powers to handle any such conflagration. These are not conflagrations. These are being done with the support of the administration to impose a majoritarian will, to bring Muslims in India to their knees, to see them humiliated, to see them have to watch, listen to DJs pumping up frenzied music, unemployed bhagwa-clad youth singing and dancing to Mia dash dash hai, and the dash dash is a maa ki gali. Mulle Pakistan. These are the songs that are trending in the ecosystem that Mr. BJP is very much at the heart of.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? I have a question for you, and then Sanjoy. Yes. Of course, there is a larger context of the kind of reports that have come in from across the country, and Mr. Goenka can respond separately to the points you made directly to him. But Mr. Azad also referenced the fact that in Delhi, at least, videos have emerged, unfortunately, from both communities, showing mobs that appear to be armed. We now know that one of the processions taken out on Hanuman Jayanti did not have police permission, led by the Shobha Yatra. But we've also seen images from the Muslim community that show them seeming to be wielding swords. And in the other case, also the members of the Hindu community seem to be armed as well. So when you say it's not a conflagration, I'm not decontextualizing. You know me and my work, but there seems to be what's called a clash of processions.
It's not a clash of processions. I'll tell you, look, there can be my video versus your video. Yeah, there can be 1,000 videos brought to bear. I want to ask specifically, just for a moment, bear with me, indulge me, and tell me that Hanuman Shobha Yatra that went on and on and on, 3 rounds. Okay, number one, nobody takes out a Shobha Yatra around the same area 3 times and look at those images. I would like to know if a single one of those young men has been booked under the Arms Act. They have desi kattas, they have baseball bats, they have swords. Is this not a threatening sight to you and me? Is this not a threatening sight to anybody? And what has been the pattern? By the way, in Khargon, I will tell you what is the pattern. And it's been a pattern across the 7 states. Look, you will bring in these aggressive processions. You will bring in these DJs that will park outside a masjid. You know, और किसी ने एक joke की भैया ये इतने मंदिर क्यों बना रहे हैं जब लगता है हर भगवाधारी को सिर्फ मस्जिद के सामने खड़े होकर के ही अपना गान गाना है. तो मैं सिर्फ ये कह रही हूँ, देखिए, 2 sides argument happens when 2 sides are equal. 2 sides in one is a disempowered community. The other has the blessings of the central government and the home ministry in Delhi. You cannot.
But see these images, Farah. Farah. These images also show the men wielding swords.
They may have I am not doubting that anybody will defend themselves. What I am questioning is, why are the first 14 people arrested all a list of Muslims? Why have only 5 Muslims been booked under the NSA? What is this equal side argument that we're hearing? That is what angers me. And frankly, these bulldozers, shame on the Aam Aadmi Party for not coming out strongly, not taking moral leadership. It did not do it in 2020. And it is, you see, the Aam Aadmi Party is very interesting. It is going a step beyond all those secular parties that said they stood with Muslims, did nothing except, we will not do genocide calls, we will not let you die, but we will bring you to the level of the Sachar committee. Aam Aadmi Party is very interesting. It is saying, yeah, we will not do genocide calls, but we will do dog whistling if we want to place have settled scores with our opponent in the MCD election, namely the BJP. Our dog whistling will be, we will call all of these Indians sitting in Jahangirpuri Rohingyas and Bangladeshis. That is the dog whistling.
Okay. You made a lot of points, including the sort of charge of selective application of the National Security Act, the NSA, making the point that only Muslims have been arrested under these acts, under this particular act. Let me bring in Sanjoy, and then I'll go to Vinit and Yasho, Azad for their responses. Sanjoy, there is a legal question here, and it's a very important legal question. Governments, or certain governments, have now decided. I interviewed the Home Minister in Madhya Pradesh, who told me that if the Supreme Court stops us, that's fine. But as far as we're concerned, we see ourselves as a state acting against criminals. The same comment has been made by the Union Minister Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi today. The Supreme Court has halted what's happening in Delhi, but this is only Delhi specific. This has already happened in UP with Yogi Adityanath being applauded for it. And obviously Madhya Pradesh, where elections are also due shortly, senses that there is political reward here. How much can the Supreme Court really hold this back? It can be called an administrative response after all.
Thank you, Barkha, for having me. I don't know whether you are aware that when the order of the Honorable Supreme Court was passed at 10:40 in the presence of all lawyers, including the lawyers of MCD and the central government, the Delhi police did not take any action and the demolition continued till 12:40. So even the Supreme Court's intervention was of no use. And what they said was astounding. They said that we have not been formally given a copy of the order. So therefore, we will, as far as we are concerned, we are doing whatever the North MCD has told us to do. Number one. Number two, be under no misconception that this kind of action with 400 and more police people can be just the brainchild of a mayor of one corporation of Delhi, which also has now been merged into the other two. This has the blessings and the sanctions at the highest of the high at the government level. And this is the shocking part of all that is happening. Now, let me tell you that I was fortunate enough to have the experience of being called at 12:30 at night in February 2020, when this riots happened at the chambers of Justice Muralidhar. I was a counsel for the Delhi police at that time, and I know the impact of an immediate court intervention. That midnight hearing at Justice Muralidhar ensured the riot stopped completely. So let's be very clear that when the judiciary is resolute, the police and the state apparatus also know how to wind back or how to control the situation, because riots cannot happen without the blessings and the sanction of the highest of the high in all the apparatus. Now, what is the problem that is happening? You had the case the next day after the midnight hearing transferred from Justice Muralidhar's bench. Justice Muralidhar was transferred. Of course, the transfer was pending. It was not related directly to this. It may have been expedited by this. And thereafter, that case has languished till now. You had the issue of Sudarshan TV's hate speech being taken up by the Honorable Supreme Court. There were all these bites which were reported, and then that case has gone into cold storage. You have all these repeatedly the courts being motioned about, as Ms. Naqvi pointed out, about the hate speech conclave in Haridwar, and the courts have been silent. You have people who go and attack the office of the chief minister, the residence of the chief minister, and they are out on bail and they are celebrated. And let not the BJP gent, if you can call him a gent, pretend to be holier than thou and talk about all rioters being treated differently, because rioters in Jharkhand were actually felicitated by the then Minister of State for Finance.
Sorry.
Yes.
Complete your point. I need to then go back to our politicians. Yeah.
The point that I'm making is today, if we are going to substitute constitutional rights, the rule of law, the municipal corporation law, which says that you have to give notice, you have to give hearing, you have a right to appeal, if you're going to substitute that by instant bulldozer justice, then remember that the day is not far when they'll say, agar bulldozer ho sakta hai, instant justice, why can't we have instant lynching justice? If we think that someone is guilty, why should we go through a court of law?
Let me, and you raise a fair point, but the fact, as I said, is that there seems to be tragically wide public sanction, at least among sanctions of voters. So only the Supreme Court perhaps is to find a mechanism to actually stop this and say that it doesn't reconcile with due process. Now, I want to just bring in another voice from the ground. As I said, across the religious divide, Hindu ho ya Musalman, jo garib aadmi ya aurat aaj Jahangirpuri ke hain, they are bereft right now. Mr. Goenka makes the point that these are criminals who are being attacked. There's also questions for the Aam Aadmi Party raised by Farah Naqvi. But first, let's listen in to another voice from the ground.
आपको लगता है कि 3 दिनों पहले जो यहाँ पे घटना हुई थी उसको लेकर फिर ये इंक्रोचमेंट यहाँ हटाया जा रहा है, और बीजेपी की तरफ से जो यहाँ के दिल्ली प्रदेश अध्यक्ष उन्होंने कहा कि ये जो दंगाई हैं उन्हें यहाँ से हटाया जाए, तो क्या इस वजह से ये प्रेशर काम कर रहा है यहाँ पे?
तो इसमें देखा जाए कि हम क्या दंगाई थे? हम तो रेडी पटरी वाले थे, करे कोई भरे कोई क्या? हम तो दुकानदार हैं, कोई दंगा करके या कोई कुछ करके, या हम तो रेडी पे अपनी दुकान लगाते थे और अचानक हम लोगों की दुकान की तोड़े गए। जो दंगा किया उसको पकड़ो। आप हमारी रेडी पटरी में क्या राजनीति करने आ गए यहाँ पर? ये क्या रेडी पटरी राजनीति करने के लिए चीज़ है क्या? गरीब के पेट में लात मारने की चीज़ है क्या? ये हम लोग गरीब के पेट में लात मारा गया और कुछ नहीं हुआ।
गरीब के पेट में लात मारा गया, हम तो रेडी पट्टी वाले लोग हैं, आप अपनी राजनीति हमारे साथ क्यों कर रहे हैं? Says a poor man in Jahangirpuri. I did have questions for Nitin Tyagi. He's just lost his connection. We'll bring him back. Let's start with you, Mr. Goenka. Are you really going after rioters, or are you going after the poor? The Hindu and the Muslim on the ground are asking the same question to those who decided to bring bulldozers in.
I would like to thank you once again. That last 19 minutes uninterruptedly, I was educated on many things. And I remember that famous Hindi saying, मुंह में अल्लाह और बगल में भाला. यानी हमारे लिए एक कानून और दूसरे के लिए दूसरा कानून. हम कॉन्वेंट स्कूल में जाएंगे, लेकिन मुस्लिम जो बहनें हैं छोटी, वो इलीगल मदरसास में जाएगी, वो ट्रिपल तलाक में जो है सफर करेगी, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. तो ये तो चलता रहेगा. And I would request, stop romanticizing this jihadis and this, writers. Writers do not believe. If terrorist does not have a religion, writers don't have a religion.
जो आपने दो आदमी
देखिए मैं 19 मिनट बरखा में सुन रहा था, 5
नहीं आप बोलिए आप बेशक
38 सवाल मैंने सुने हैं. 38 सवाल के मैं 6-7 खाली जवाब दूंगा. थोड़ा पेशेंस, बोलिए, टॉलरेंस तो होगा जरूर. टेररिस्ट के कोई रिलीजन नहीं होता, जिहादी का कोई रिलीजन नहीं होता, राइटर का कोई रिलीजन होता है, और लोहे का बना हुआ जेसीपी का भी कोई रिलीजन नहीं होता. जेसीपी तो उसी पे चलता है जिसका इलीगल कंस्ट्रक्शन होता है, उसमें रोना धोना नहीं चाहिए. और हमने स्टॉप करना चाहिए रोमांटिसाइजिंग. मैं याद करता हूं, मैंने फिल्म देखी थी जिसके अंदर हेमा मालिनी जी गाना गा रही थी, उसमें फिरोज खान साहब भी थे. क्या खूब लगती है, बड़ी सुंदर लगती है. ये गाने की शूटिंग जो है बमियन बुद्धा में हुआ था. एक हिंदू हीरोइन, एक मुस्लिम हीरो, हिंदी पिक्चर वहां बनती है, वहां बुद्धिस्ट फोटोग्राफ्स दिखाए जाते हैं, मूर्ति दिखाई जाती है, और लोकल लोगों का बिजनेस होता है. दे वर एंजॉयिंग दैट. देन आई सी अ वीडियो वेयर बमियन बुद्धा वाज बॉट डाउन बाय सम पीपल. And those people were happy that it was brought down because it was la ilaha illallah.
That's Afghanistan. It's Afghanistan. हमारे अपने देश की बात करिए ना सर.
Next, sir, इतना तो पेशेंस है कि मैंने भी तो.
Let's hear him. Let him have his say. Go ahead.
इतना इंटॉलरेंस क्या है? मतलब
प्लीज बोलिए ना, बोलिए. जहांगीरपुरी की थोड़ी बात.
मुझे प्रॉब्लम उसका नहीं है, टूट गया बहन. वहां जो अभी भागे ना वहां से, वो मुस्लिम लोग भागे हैं अफगानिस्तान से. कोई काफिर नहीं भागा वहां से, कोई हिंदू नहीं भागा, कोई क्रिश्चियन नहीं भागा, कोई सिख नहीं भागा वहां से. वीडियोज आई है, भाग भाग के प्लेन के अंदर बैठे हैं टोपी लगा के. आप ही के लिए बोल रहे हैं, ये लोग कोई मदद नहीं करेंगे. आई विल गिव यू वन फैक्ट. ग्रोथ रेशियो ऑफ मुस्लिम्स इज व्हाट यू नो, इट इज 24.8% as per the census of 2011, whereas Hindus is only 16.8%. This country has given a right that if 2 Hindus are born, 3 Hindu Muslims will be born. I never asked whether you're Shia, whether you're a Burmaya, whether you are a Khoja, or whether you are a Bori. Everybody got a right to.
The fertility,
this country has given you
I just want to correct you on one thing. I want to correct you on one thing. The fertility rate decline is the steepest. Mr. Goenka, I must be allowed to correct you on something. The fertility rate decline in the Muslim community today is the steepest among all religious communities. Yes, their growth rate continues to be higher. Their growth rate continues to be higher, but so is their fall.
The second majority of this country is 17.22% of the majority. So let us now stop calling it minority.
I don't understand what any of what you have said has to do with Jahangirpuri.
But you understand that a poor person has a right to break law? You understand that they can shoot a policeman? How can you understand that? Stop
talk about that. Please talk about that. Let's talk about the
exactly. You have to educate them. Don't go to madrasa, go to a formal school.
Can you talk about Jahangirpuri? May
I formal education में जाइए.
May I ask you a question? May I ask you?
You're a fair journalist. You have been known to be fair. 19 minutes, I did not interrupt. Now you're interrupting me every 19 seconds. Now somebody had an objection of 3 times the procession. 5 बार नमाज पढ़ते कोई ऑब्जेक्ट नहीं करते. इलीगली पढ़ते क्योंकि सुप्रीम कोर्ट का नियम है, फिर उसके बावजूद भी पढ़ते. किसी ने ऑब्जेक्ट किया. आज आपको 3 बार हमारे प्रोसेशन में ये हो गए. और कहां से मुस्लिम इलाका हो गया? हिंदुस्तान है, एक है ना, तो हिंदू रिलीजन का कोई इलाका है ना मुस्लिम इलाका है. आप ही लोग बोलेंगे. और आपने बोला कि मुस्लिम महिलाओं के बारे में मत सोचिए. तो क्या आप सोचेंगे जो एसी रूम में बैठते हैं कभी भी गरीब आदमी के घर नहीं गए, वो सोचेंगे? We got elected because we go there. We understand their pain. They don't want to be supported under triple talaq. They don't want justice system. We'll have to protect them. Now let me tell you one more thing. I can't allow you to insult, instigate, and then say react mat karo. और क्या react किया? Lawful है. Tell me a law. Does it permit you to be arrested if you're a writer? Does not a law permit a house?
Can I ask you a question, sir? Mr. Goenka, I just have. एक minute. I just want to ask you one question and say one thing. You are correct in talking. एक मिनट सर, मुझे बोलने तो दीजिए. मैं आप ही से सवाल
बता रहा हूँ.
उसके बाद त्यागी जी से भी पूछना
करिए महिलाओं का.
सुनिए तो सही.
मैं सुन रहा हूँ.
आप और मैं एक अलग कार्यक्रम करेंगे on the population demographics. You're right in saying that the growth rate.
जब कंट्री प्रोटेक्ट करती है, यहाँ शिया बढ़े हैं, बोरी बढ़े हैं, अहमदिया बढ़े हैं, देवबंदी बढ़े हैं. बताइए मुस्लिम कंट्री जहाँ पे शिया बढ़े.
अच्छा, एक मिनट. The data tells you that the Muslims will never outnumber the Hindus in this country. तो सबसे पहले ये एक statistical fact है. No, sir. This is you are entitled. You are entitled to all opinions you want, but you cannot.
0.8% growing up, man.
Mr.
Christians have come down.
I will have to have a separate program with you on the demographic debate. I now need you.
Education of Muslim girls.
Okay,
and we should stop them from illegal mothers.
I want to.
NCERT books.
I would like to return the focus to what we're talking about, and my question now is to Nitin. And Farah Naqvi has a question for you, which was also my question in the beginning, which you did not answer. You put the entire blame at the door of the BJP. आपने अपनी बात नहीं की. अगर आपको सच में लगता है कि ये बुलडोजर जो लाए गए हैं जहांगीरपुरी में आपकी सरकार है दिल्ली में, आप जाके उन बुलडोजर्स के सामने खड़े हो जाइए, दर्शन कर दीजिए, धरना कर दीजिए. Your party came into power on the back of dharna politics. Where is the Aam Aadmi Party's dharna stopping these bulldozers in Jahangirpuri? एक नेता शायद I think from the left was standing in front of the bulldozers today. और तो कोई नेता नहीं आया. नितिन आपसे सवाल.
Barkha, can you add to that?
पहले मैं थोड़ा सा गोयनका जी के.
One minute, Nitin now.
Barkha, can you add to that the state PWD was also part of the anti-encroachment force. So the state government can't evade responsibility.
Okay, that's a very important point. Yeah, go ahead, Nitin.
State government, देखिए MCD was the part of the demolition, the whole demolition process. Let me just take 1 minute and respond to Mr. Goenka. What Mr. Goenka was talking about, he was talking about Afghanistan. Do you want our country to go the Afghanistan way? Do you want us to become like Afghanistan, or are you extremely inspired by what happened in Afghanistan? Do you want to replicate it in India? You want to replicate it in India? Do you think what they did was right? This is how you're going to behave? Standing behind the Taliban, you're going to give example of Taliban, and then you're going to say that BJP goons are doing the same thing what Taliban was doing in Afghanistan. This is what you're trying to say, Mr. Goenka. Let me respond to Barkha ji. Let me respond to Barkha ji's question.
Yeah, please respond to my question. Yes.
Let me respond to Barkha ji's question.
Please,
Yes,
yeah,
it's
don't
We
do
evident.
this.
have
This is
our
not a
position
television show. I
clear,
don't like this
extremely
shouting.
clear.
Please, Nitin,
All
my
the
question is to
encroachments
you.
that were there
Yes.
had happened when BJP is there in MCD, BJP is there in Home
Mr.
Ministry,
Tyagi,
which
I
is
asked
ruling
you a
the
question.
police.
I asked you a
Everything
political
that has
question.
happened
Sir,
today,
sir,
BJP
I
has
asked
done
you
it.
a political
One.
question. Sir,
Secondly,
I asked you a political question.
there is
Where
a
is your
court case
thunder?
in Supreme Court. Tomorrow its judgment is going to come. And
Yes.
accordingly, we are going to act on it and rehabilitate people if we are asked to do that. And I think since last 3 years, there was no notice of demolition in those areas. I can personally say if I would have known, I did not know it personally because I was not
गंगा
there in
करेंगे
Delhi.
तो JCB
And
आएगा.
if I would have been there, I would have gone to Jahangirpuri. Definitely, I would have gone to Jahangirpuri and stood in front of those bulldozers.
You would have.
This is
Okay.
my stand. This is my stand. I was on the way when I was asked to join this debate. So I was on my way back to Delhi. I was not in Delhi at that time. If I would have known it, I would have been there.
Would you like to respond
Definitely,
to
I would have been
Sanjoy's-
there, and I would have
you
been a
like to
part of.
respond? Okay, all right. Thank you for letting us know that. Would you like to respond to Sanjoy's specific question that the state administration CPWD was also involved in this demolition drive?
It is not state. CPWD is center. Please be clear about it. PWD was not part of it. MCD was part of it.
The order talks about PWD.
I'm sorry, I said CPWD. I meant to say
So
PWD.
was
I'm
PWD
sorry,
over there?
my mistake.
PWD was not there at all.
Sanjoy?
The order clearly refers to the action program comprising PWD, local body, police, and works maintenance department. This is the order of.
So whenever a demolition drive is done, an intimation is given to all these departments. So please don't make it an issue. PWD was not there.
Okay, let's come to Mr. Azad. I know, Farah, you've got your hand up right after that. Now, you know, the thing is, I hate shouting, so I'm really requesting our guests, please try and speak one at a time. I understand we have strong opinions. I only interject when the facts are distorted on data, numbers. I feel it's my job to interject. You're free to have any opinion you want. Mr. Azad, please go ahead.
You know, in such a lively, ongoing, informed debate, I hate butting in with mundane and boring facts, but a couple of observations.
Yeah.
Number one is that, you know, bulldozers, again, because that is the focus of our topic today, I don't think bulldozers have any place in riot or riot control. In fact, the law which was passed by the MP government, and you interviewed also the state home minister, it talks about a claims commissioner, it talks about a tribunal, it talks about people whose houses have been demolished. They can put their claims there. They will put it up to the claims commissioner. They will analyze and double the cost they will from the writer. At that time, they will get it auctioned or whatever. Bulldozer is a thing which is purely for encroachment, and due process of law has to be used for that. And that's why the Supreme Court has stepped in. I hope it steps in all the states. Number two, as far as the arrests in the NSA are concerned, MS Naqvi has raised the right concern that why only these 5 have been from only one party. That's true. The 5 who have been arrested, however, are the known goons of the area, I assure you, because we know about them. But as I said in the beginning, and very respectfully, I'm telling Mr. Goenka also, you know, the important thing, the culpability has to lie at the point of origin. Delhi police didn't give the permission and the procession started. The organizers of the procession, which was carrying naked swords, do have a very, very high sense of responsibility. And that is why I think they must be charged with the heaviest, and the naked swords, you know, carriers must be charged with the NSA. That's number 2. Now, the third point, very, very briefly, you know, one point which MS Naqvi referred to, and I agree with her again, is that, you know, parties giving all kinds of abasement platforms and things like that for the minorities. Mind you, this sequence of events is not only happening in BJP time, it has been happening for the last 40 or 50 years. The carriage of processions, the perfunctory meetings before, and the fracas. But let me tell you also one thing, that it is not true that the riots occur only when the highest want it. Even if the highest want it in the land, the riots will not occur if there are officers standing. And we have seen many
So
instances.
let me intercede on the side of the police actually for this one moment by pointing out that both in Khargon and Delhi, policemen have taken bullet injuries, bullet shots. You have a superintendent of police who took a bullet injury in Khargon in Madhya Pradesh, and you have a sub-inspector who has taken a bullet injury in Delhi. So what does that say to you? Because you've localized the responsibility with the police. The police doesn't have an easy job. Here's one of the policemen who was injured. Go ahead, Mr. Azad.
It's absolutely true, and one of the places where the NSA is used is when a policeman is attacked. I think it's one of the most serious issues. And let me again go back to the same point which I made earlier, that the heavy stone pelting which came from both sides really establishes the point that they were fully prepared. Now, the police investigation may reveal at the point of conflagration, which is very important, who started it. But thereafter, when it continued, you did realize that each side was heavily armed. And that is why it was extremely important to take measures and not to allow the procession at all, or if allowed, there should have been a heavy police contingent. And lastly, my point is, Barkha, time has come that on many issues, there has to be some kind of an opinion, a majority opinion form. What should we do? Our processions will have to go. Music will accompany the procession. Can you say that because in Muslim areas, the processions can't go? I mean, you can't do that. So some kind of norms, some kinds of issues have to be resolved, and they can only be resolved between the two communities, which used to happen when we were in the districts. We used to call both sides and then evolve a kind of a framework and then allow the processions, and they would pass.
I think that's an important question, because we are not a country where religion is private. Our religious manifestations are very public. Farah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to respond to what Mr. Azad is saying. While I tend to agree with a lot of what he's saying about the administration and the police and the fact that policemen are injured, I disagree with none of it. But I continue to fundamentally, and I want to flag this, the both sides argument does not hold true in the present India that we're living in, Mr. Azad. This is an India of the past where the administration could actually do something. The administration has sold its soul to the reigning ideology, which is very categorically, you have to be living under a rock to not know that we are living in an anti-minority, anti-Muslim India today, in which there is no possibility of an equal force being used from both sides. Number one. Number two, of course, processions are the beauty of this country. They should go wherever they can go safely. Yes. What is this? There's been this hawa created, Muslim area. अरे यार, मुसलमानों को रेंट नहीं दोगे, गरीब हैं, कहीं ना कहीं गेटोज में कोई तो रहेंगे. Every community lives together, yaar. There are Bengalis in Chitranjan Park, one CPDP colony. There are Punjabis in Lajpat Nagar. There are professional communities. There are Muslims in Ukhla. There are what does that mean? It is merely saying don't walk into that area and run a DJ and songs. What kind of songs are acceptable?
Okay.
The police does not have ears to know that you're cursing, hurling abuses and saying गाने गा रहे हैं कि तू क्या तेरा बाप भी बोलेगा जय श्री राम. इस तरह के बेहुदा गाने गाना ये कौन से धर्म को शोभा देता है? मेरा तो सवाल यही है कि this is not dharmic. This is a pre-planned humiliation. And I want to just respond to Mr. Goenka from the BJP. His great concern again is he's touching about Muslim women. He keeps repeating ad nauseum his great concern for Muslim girls' education. Sir, please leave Muslim girls' education out of your purview. You have harmed Muslims and Muslim women more than you can possibly imagine, and your concern for those Muslims fleeing the Taliban. But आपका CAA तो उनको हिंदुस्तान में भी शरण नहीं देगा, तो आप अपना CAA कम से कम इस बयान के बहाने उसको रिवाइज कर दीजिए. आप कह रहे हैं वो भाग रहे हैं अफगानिस्तान से, but India will not give them refuge, right? So you are very complicated arguments that made absolutely no sense, frankly, sir. Lastly, I want to, the up person has gone, but for the record, please, if they are actually serious, look, why are we debating bulldozers? It seems, it's a level of insanity. We are debating illegal, unconstitutional acts by the state, and we're actually debating them instead of just saying this is insane. No democratic country where you have rule of law, and at this point, this is not about Hindus and Muslims for me. I am seeing rule of law collapse, go into the gutter with this.
Okay, let the AAP person I'm hoping will reconnect. Yeah, I believe he's lost
Barkha,
his
can I come in?
connection.
Because I think
Yes.
I should respond. Otherwise, what
Yes.
will happen is
Please go ahead.
they will
Please go ahead. Please
uninterrupted
go
me.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So let me repeat that saying which I heard from some friend of mine that मुंह में अल्लाह बगल में भाला नहीं चलेगा. आज सोशल मीडिया में ये जो बोल रही है कि मुस्लिम महिला को छोड़ दे, ये सबको पता है इनके कहाँ से बैकग्राउंड आते हैं. So we don't have to react to them. Let me tell everybody
Background
who's
meaning?
watching this.
Anyway, I don't. What does background mean, Mr.
You're
Goenka?
talking about me.
Ma'am,
You're talking
as
about
in-
me and my
you
education.
are nobody. Farah ma'am, have a patience. I heard you, right? Whatever you're speaking, whether it was
Okay, but
baseless,
don't make
yet I was listening to it.
personal-
Bhai,
don't
ye
make
itna kya hai?
personal
I was
remarks,
listening,
Mr.
I was
Goenka.
listening, right? So let
Azad-
me also complete four
But
lines.
let's not talk about people's backgrounds. We are not
No, I'm
talking about
telling
anybody's
the background
background.
of this narration. तो ये जो
Of the-
second
okay, all right,
majority,
all right.
second
Let's not-
majority को
okay.
enemies within के साथ में connect करना है. All the second majority is not enemies within. Let us differentiate this. Enemies within
Okay.
have to be identified.
Chalo,
and
let's
punished.
talk on the issue.
Number
Mr.
two,
Goenka,
number
make
two,
your
Mr.
point.
Jha. Mr. Jha, you said the procession, there was stones being thrown from both the sides. Procession, I can agree. They were on the road, they had access to stones or the things which are there on the road. How did Masjid have this access? You were in IB, sir. Please tell me. That
Mr.
means there were
Azad,
stones.
not Mr. Jha.
Who stores it,
Mr.
sir, Mr. Azad? Who stores it? That means you were storing it because you had a purpose. And the people who were on the road, they had an access to the stone. If I go by your story, A. B. There were swords. Okay, I can see that. But there were guns also, sir. Who had the gun? And did you get a gun immediately because you knew that somebody is going to sing a DJ? What kind of
Both
argument?
sides,
You're a
both
reasonably
communities were
responsible
armed,
person.
Mr. Goenka. Mr.
So
Goenka, I
let
can
us
play
not
the.
glorify-
Mr. Goenka,
let us
both
not
communities
glorify
were armed.
jihadis.
Both communities
Let me
were armed.
request you, sir, let us
Both communities
educate
were
them in a
armed. I'm
formal
just
school.
underlining this.
Let us
Both
help them, sir.
communities.
Let us help them. Help them. And why are they staying in ghettos? Why are they poor? Because they did not go through formal education. बंद करिए मदरसाओं को. उनके अच्छे स्कूलों में पढ़ाइए. स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के स्कूल में पढ़ाइए, म्युनिसिपल स्कूल्स में पढ़ाइए, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के स्कूल में पढ़ाइए, ताकि उनको अच्छी नौकरी मिले. जैसे आप एयर कंडीशन में रहते हैं, वैसे मेरी बाकी मुस्लिम बहनें क्यों नहीं रहेगी? उनको भी अधिकार दीजिए. क्यों उनको केवल टायर पंचर साफ करने के लिए भेजते हैं आप?
Acha,
Can
can you tell me, Mr. Goenka, do you agree with bulldozers being brought into riot
Of course.
areas? Tell me why.
बुलडोजर
Tell
के
me
कोई
why.
धर्म नहीं होता है. कोई देखिए डंडे को कोई धर्म नहीं होता है. आजाद साहब बताएंगे कोई डंडे का धर्म होता है क्या साहब? आपने कभी देखा था कि उसका नाम सरिता की सलमा है? कभी आपने पूछा था जब डंडा चलाया था? आपने तो न्याय देखा था ना. तो ऐसा कैसे हो गया कि आज जो पुलिस वाले उसको कोई न्याय नहीं देखते, केवल आप ही का बैच देखता था?
Let me get Sanjoy. Okay.
Please,
Okay,
sir.
Mr. Goenka. Mr.
You know,
Goenka.
just
nothing-
because-
One minute. I just tell Sanjoy. I'll just.
Center,
Acha, एक minute. Mr.
everybody in the
Goenka.
IPS and the police
Mr.
are biased.
Goenka. Mr.
Please
Goenka,
incorrect,
अगर
sir. You are a
Mr.
veteran
Goenka,
policeman.
sir,
You should
sir,
understand this, sir.
अगर
Please.
बुलडोजर ने कभी धर्म
तो
नहीं
कहीं
देखा,
मदद कर सकते तो मेरी मुस्लिम बहनों को फॉर्मल एजुकेशन में आने की
सर
मदद करें।
मेरा एक सवाल प्लीज, मैं भी आपकी बहन की तौर पे एक
जवाब तो
सवाल
दे
पूछ रही
दीजिए।
हूँ। मेरा सवाल तो सुनिए। अगर
नहीं,
बुलडोजर इतनी बढ़िया
आप
चीज
लोग
है,
समझिए।
एवरीवन कीप क्वाइट प्लीज, लेट मी आस्क अ क्वेश्चन। अगर बुलडोजर इतनी बढ़िया चीज है मिस्टर गोयनका, तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने क्यों रोका है उसको?
नहीं रोका क्या है? उन्हें स्टे किया। क्या सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा कि never use it?
Halt.
What does it mean? See, halt they have even given to arrest. When Mr. Jha went to arrest somebody, they have given
Mr.
a-
Azad,
halt.
Mr. Azad, not Mr.
Azad.
Jha.
Is Mr. Azad only the person who is a policeman?
Haan.
There can be one Mr. Jha also, ma'am. Why are you getting,
Okay,
blocked?
all right.
There may be one Jha also who went to arrest.
Yeah, actually, okay,
police
fine.
क्या सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने
have
बोला
a
ना कि
right to reply, Barkha.
What does
Yes,
it mean
yes,
by
of course.
bail?
Hang on,
Bail
hang
means
on,
what?
hang on.
क्या पुलिस को झूठ बोल रहा है?
Okay.
When
Can
they
I
say halt
get
means what?
Sanjoy? Can I
Hear
give
it out.
Sanjoy
You
and then
know
I'll give
that
Mr.
story.
Azad the
You know
last
that
word?
story.
I'll give Mr.
Let
Azad the
justice be
last
there.
word.
आप क्यों जस्टिस कर रहे हैं? आप तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट से बड़े हो।
Actually, Vinit, breathe. Sanjoy, quick response. Sanjoy.
Just one sentence. We all
Yeah.
know in which context we are living. We all know how institutions have been compromised. We all know today that this crocodile tears for Muslim women's education, and which background it is, which backdrop it is. Please, at least do whatever you have. You have the country in your hands, but don't insult the intelligence of the common man. Please.
Mr. Azad.
And please, the rule of law. Remember one thing, Mr. Goenka, and remember this clearly. Remember that one day you will also have to sit in opposition. Remember, there are certain states like West Bengal where you cry when the chief minister and the ruling party
I'll tell you
gets
something.
back at you with
Don't
brute
pressure
force.
us this long. We have never been born here to enjoy power.
Therefore, please
हम
don't
लड़ाई
interrupt
की
me.
जीवन जीने के लिए जीते
Please
सर.
don't interrupt me. Have
ये
the
संदर्भ
courtesy to listen.
प्रचार की
We
जीवन
listen
जीते.
listen to your
एयर कंडीशन रूम में बैठ के दूसरों को गरीब नहीं बनाते. खुद कॉन्वेंट स्कूल में जाके उनको मदरसा नहीं भेजते.
Okay, all right,
जिसका
enough.
मुझे पड़ा उसमें मेरी बहन को नहीं पढ़ाऊंगा.
Bas, Vinit and Sanjoy, both of you made your point, Mr. Azad. Not just the right to reply, but the overall way forward out of this mess.
All I'm saying is the rule of law protects everyone.
Got
and we
it.
should all
I got it. I heard you, Mr.
गोयनका
Azad,
साहब
please.
ने बड़ी गर्मजोशी से जवाब देने का प्रयास किया, लेकिन वो ज्यादा चिल्ला रहे थे, उनके आर्ग्यूमेंट में दम कम था. ऐसा है, जब हम लॉ एंड ऑर्डर को कंट्रोल करते हैं तो हम राइट्स को डिस्पर्स करने के लिए लॉ को यूज करते हैं. आपका जो लॉ था उसमें बुलडोजर यूज करने का प्रावधान नहीं था. इसलिए चाहे आप कितना भी चिल्लाएं, आपके आर्ग्यूमेंट में वो सत्यता नहीं आ सकती है. और जैसा निजी प्रहार आप दूसरों पे करते हैं, वैसे निजी प्रहार की आवश्यकता मैं आप पे करना उचित नहीं समझता, क्योंकि मैं ये नहीं समझता that I would like to dignify your remarks. But thank you very much for your informed judgment.
Can I end here by saying
when I
we need
speak,
a
sir,
way
it
out?
becomes a personal, sir. When you say that except you and your batch, everybody else is compromised. The entire police system is compromised. Is it
I
right?
never said that police is compromised. Don't shout.
Somebody said in the program right now, they are
He
compromised.
said,
I'm not
the
impressed
police
Sir,
had
by your
we are
shouting.
decorated, respectful people.
All right, but
And I tell you, there are
Mr.
Muslim
I have
officers, there are
spoken.
second
Let's
majority
not
officers.
shout.
You know, Mister,
better
I've
than us.
spoken.
Okay,
with
I
hundred
have
reps,
to interject
but
here.
I haven't spoken with anybody like you
Mr.
who has bereft
Mr.
of
Azad, may
any.
I ask you a larger question? Mr. Goenka, I think you made your point.
point.
I really don't like shouting on my own shows, but I'm interjecting here to ask
That's
Mr.
what
Azad
we
a
can
larger
do.
question. Mr. Azad, I have a larger question for you.
Yes.
What
yes.
is the way forward out of this? This has now become a pattern. We need to break the pattern. What is the way to break the pattern?
I think the first way to break the pattern is that the state governments have to be very, very tough with the rule of law. And this goes across. It's look at the non-BJP governments or the BJP governments. There is no, whenever it comes to communal, the state government starts dithering. I don't believe that any state government wants riots to happen in their place. It's a question of how the local authorities stand up. And I don't believe that any state government also wants riots or, makes riots happen. No, that's not true. It's the failure of the administration on ground. Today, what has happened is that the authorities on ground have stopped taking decisions because of transfers, because of fear, because of whatever you call share or whatever that is there. But that's the job of the local authorities. If the collectors and SPs stand firm, and I tell you, out of the lot, there are 30% still who are absolutely honest, who are committed in their areas, this will not be allowed.
Okay, all right. I have to end it here. I'm sorry that, some of us raised our voices on this program. We try and avoid that. I personally try and avoid that, but the issues are sensitive and the stakes are high. And the voices from the ground tell us that Hindu or Muslim, it is the poor today who are suffering, the very, very abjectly poor whose livelihood has been snatched away from them without due process overnight. At the same time, one has to acknowledge the political patterns that are emerging. There's wide public sanction for a lot of these measures, which is why what the court does next becomes so very critical. Thank you, Vinit, Sanjoy, Mr. Azad, Farah, and Nitin, whom we lost, unfortunately, midway, because I did have a lot of questions for the Aam Aadmi Party as well. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.